Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt here with Alyx King. Today is Wednesday, April the 10th, 2019. It is 8 a.m. in New York. It is 5 a.m. in Los Angeles. It's 1 p.m. in Los Angeles. I'm sorry, in London, rather. And Sydney, Australia. I keep messing up Sydney, Australia. I apologize for that. I'm not even going to pretend that I know what time it is in Sydney. So we'll just kind of say good morning, Sydney. But wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And I'm happy that we're doing a show on a Wednesday morning where we're both kind of waking ourselves up as we get going. No, okay, well, you start with whatever you've got and you just go forward from there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So, and you had a good idea. You brought up an idea before the podcast about a topic,
hmm
one that we really haven't explored. I mean, it's one of those things you kind of go after tangentially sometimes, but no,
hmm
we haven't really talked about it. So rather than me doing the introduction, and since it's your idea, I'm going to let you introduce the topic. So, Alyx King, what's our topic for today?
Okay, so today I decided that we should talk about mental health once again, but
Hmm.
from the angle of the people that have to deal with the people going through the mental health.
Hmm. So, in other
Yes.
words, what it's like being the client and interacting with the people who are trying to help you.
No, I'm talking about the family members of the people or friends and, stuff like that.
So, a ripple effect here. We got degrees of separation going on here.
Degrees of separation, yes.
Okay, all right. And
So
tell us a little bit of where that came from. Why this? Why this particular topic? What made you think of it?
My father's been coming up a lot lately, and he's bipolar. So I'd like to talk about, what it was like growing up with him being bipolar.
Okay. And
And I
certainly anyone who's grown up
also,
with that or lived with bipolar can empathize, but those of us who have not, it's going to be a little bit of an eye opener, isn't it?
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So give us some clues. What's it like growing up with a bipolar father?
I'll tell you this. Is like I tell everybody, it's a lifetime of walking on eggshells because you don't
Yikes.
know, yeah, you don't know what's going to trigger that person, what's going to set them off, and you don't know which direction it's going to trigger them to. It could be a manic episode, it could be a depression episode. So you never know which way you're going to go. So you got to walk on eggshells at all times.
It's like going through life without taking a breath.
Yes. Yes. It is.
Well, that can't be good for your stress level. I'm sorry. It
No,
just
it's not. I was a very stressful 10-year-old.
I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Well, now your father drove a bus. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yes. So he wasn't home all the time. I mean, there were periods of time where he was away from home, wasn't he?
Well, early in my life, he drove for the public transportation system. So
Okay.
he was just working regular shifts and he
Around
was
town.
home. Yeah, he was home. And then later in life, he bought his own bus and started his own company. So he was doing trips for weekends at a time. So we
Got it.
so we so we know of. And
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
yeah. So he would be gone for long periods of time. Yeah.
Hmm.
So it
Okay.
was like, so those were like the breaks.
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah, that would be
yeah.
the breathing spell. That's when you actually get
hmm
to do your breathing. Hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like, oh, I had fun this weekend. What was different? Oh, Dad wasn't here. Okay.
That sucks. I mean,
It
I
does.
know I know that there's so many people who go through life with either a dysfunctional mother or a dysfunctional father or both, or don't even
hmm
have a living mother or a living father or both. And
hmm
I mean, there's plenty of stuff to go around in that sense. But even so, that's got to be tough to actually have a living father and you can't really relate to him as a father. You have to relate to him almost like he's a patient or something.
Well, he had his moments, like when he would have his manic episodes, and he'd do things like, "Oh, I'm so excited! Let's take a trip to Connecticut and go to Red Lobster." And we're like,
Mhm.
"Cheddar Bay biscuits, let's go!" So there were moments like that in my childhood that were fun. So, which is why
Good.
you didn't realize there was a problem because you had those moments in between.
Mm. Yeah, and that's confusing. I mean, it's going to be
Hmm.
confusing for anybody, but it's especially going to be confusing for a kid.
Yes, yes. And it wasn't until I was probably 12 or 13 and my father was hospitalized because my mother just couldn't take the fact that he wasn't on his meds anymore. She just couldn't take it. So she had him hospitalized to get him regulated for medication and everything else. And then I realized, I was like, wait, why are we visiting dad in a hospital? What's going on? I'm so confused. And then
Mm.
that's when we were finally told what was going on and how he is and why he is the way he is.
So is it standard protocol within the mental health field to simply volunteer, okay, we're going to give Alyx and her siblings and other family members who need it counseling to help them understand what's going on here, or are you kind of left on your own, or how does that work out?
No, they usually, I mean, nowadays more often they offer family counseling and caregiver counseling.
Hmm.
And so, but I don't, it wasn't like that back in the day. They were just like, if you want to tell your kids, but we're only talking to the patient and whoever brought them here.
Uh-huh. Okay, so you were pretty much left to fend for yourself unless your mom was able to bring it up and talk about it with you,
Mhm. Mhm.
which I'm guessing that she probably tried to do.
She did in her own way. She tried to explain it, but like, what do you say to a 8 and 7 year old? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, especially when you don't fully understand it yourself,
Right.
which makes it even harder. Yeah.
Mhm. Exactly.
So how did it, from what you can remember from that age, how did it affect you? What was your experience with it?
I just remembered never trying to make my dad angry.
Hmm. Well, I
That
don't
was
think
the
anybody tries
majority.
to. Well, that's not true. There are some kids who actually do try to make their parents angry, but most. I don't think you have to have a bipolar parent in order to not want to make your parent angry. That's probably standard for most kids, I would think.
Yeah, but that's where the walking on eggshells things comes in handy.
Yeah.
So it's like any little thing could tick him off. So it's like,
Mm.
all right, I want a snack, but I dinner's almost ready. Do I ask him or is he gonna
Mm.
flip out? And then it's like, never mind. I'd rather not even find out. So
And was body language a clue?
I wouldn't say I noticed it back then. I would probably notice it now.
Uh-huh. But back then, that was too subtle.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, you were basically tossing dice.
Mhm. Yep.
You know,
Rolling the
is
dice
it
every time.
coming up snake eyes or is it coming up craps? Which is it going to be? It's going to be one
Yeah.
or the other, or something in the middle. You could have a point to try to hit, and then you're still walking on eggshells, wondering what's going to happen with the next throw of the dice.
Exactly. It's like anytime you had to ask him a question, like if one of my friends wanted to come over, I'm like, ooh, you ask him. No, no, okay, all right. Yeah.
So, how were there differences between the way you experienced this and the way your siblings experienced it that you
I'm
know of?
sure because me and my brother were talking one day, not about my father, but it's something totally different. And he he saw it totally different from the way that I saw it. And I was like, "You don't remember this happened?" He's like, "I do, but not that's not what happened." I was like, "Oh, come on. You were right there." So, I'm pretty sure that we all there's three different stories
Mm.
to how things went down.
Which makes it even harder because now you can't even relate to the same situation because you have two, three different experiences of it.
We have three different experiences, but it's still a generalized, experience.
So there was some overlap anyway.
Yeah, there's some overlap. Like we
Good.
all knew
So
what happened. We just internalized it in different ways.
yeah, okay, all right. Do you think it affected your relationship with your siblings?
Mm, yes, I do remember there was an incident where me and my father were at at our wits' end, and I couldn't take him anymore. So I was like, I'm moving in with my grandmother, And my
Mm.
brother came to me and he said, "Please don't leave. I don't want to be," because it was always me and my brother against, versus my sister. My sister was
Oh.
like, she was the middle child, so she had her own thing going on, and she
Mm.
just, so it was always me and my brother.
Okay.
And so my brother came to me crying, and he was like, "Please don't leave. I can't handle him by myself." And I was just like, "I can't.
Mm.
I gotta go. I can't do it anymore." And I was
And,
probably 16 at the time.
and you're older than your brother, younger than your brother?
I'm the oldest. Yeah.
You're the oldest. Okay.
Mm.
Yeah. So, and I can see if he's the youngest, that would make it even harder for him
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
if there is a pecking order when it comes to dealing with a parent.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm oldest too, and I understand that.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. You're the practice child.
yes, that's right. That's exactly what you are. We'll just try it out on him and see what happens. Yeah.
Exactly. The youngest doesn't get as much flack as we did.
No, no.
They're like,
Middle child.
the other two had, went through it and it
Yeah.
turned out fine. So yeah, let them do it.
I got to ask you, what's the age difference between you and your sister?
Me and my sister 2 years, and me and my
2 years.
brother 3 years.
And my sister and I are a year apart, and my
Mhm.
sister went through. Now, we didn't have bipolar parents or anything like that,
Yeah.
but my sister went through all kinds of hell because we were only a year apart. Not so
Mm.
much because my parents were doing anything bad to her or anything like that, but more
Uh huh.
because I tended to do better academically, and she would get the
Mhm.
same teachers as me, and so she'd always, in their eyes, fail to live up to the expectations. And plus, she
See,
felt
that
like
sucks.
it does suck, and it shouldn't happen
Yeah.
that way. But
You,
that's
sh-
what happens.
you shouldn't be compared to anyone because you are the
No,
only you that there is and ever will be.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, but that's what people sometimes, very often do actually, and still do. I think not as much as perhaps in the past, but it still
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
People
Mhm.
still do it. Yeah. And add in the fact that my sister felt like my dad spent more time with me than with her. But she had a number
Mhm.
of things bubbling to the surface. You can understand why she went into drama.
Mm.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's what she decided to go to school for. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah, that's why I gravitated to drama, I'll tell you that.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. So, so for somebody who's going through a similar situation to what you went through, where they have a
Mhm.
family member, particularly a parent, I think it's even more poignant when it's a parent because the parent has so much influence over you as a kid.
Mhm. Mhm.
If you're giving advice to another kid going through the same thing, or even an adult child going through the same thing, what are some of the things that you can recommend to help lighten the load and relieve the stress?
There is a company called NAMI, and they help with mental health, the families of mental health patients.
Hmm.
And I would definitely look into giving them a call because they have they have what do you call those groups?
Support group?
Support group. Thank you.
Hmm.
Yes, they have support groups that you can go to. They also have counselors that will talk with you about what you're going through, and
Hmm.
because even though the person going with the mental health issue needs therapy, you also need therapy in dealing with them and dealing with your own issues about dealing with them.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
so get help for yourself and for your family member. That's what I would suggest.
Because with all of this, there are going to be a number of different law of attraction, deliberate creation, or non-deliberate creation in this case, uh, instances and events and experiences going on all the time. And if you don't address them, they're going to continue. And they
Mhm.
could even get worse because the vibration keeps getting bigger and bigger over time, right? The more that you
Yep.
focus on things. So it can
Yep.
actually kind of spiral out of control. So this is like really important to address. You can't really turn a blind eye to it, can you?
No, you can't. You can't. And also, I would also remind them that it's not your fault.
Mm.
Always remember that it's not your fault. This is not your issue, but you are in it. So just remember that.
Now, yesterday, you and me and Bill G. Bill was doing the SRT, trying to help you out with the various phobias and so forth that you deal with, and he
Hmm.
pointed out he started talking for a bit about soul contracts.
Yes.
Do you think that soul contracts apply in this situation? Do you think you, for instance, had a soul contract with your father to be here to deal with him while he was doing this thing?
Yep, I definitely do. Because
Why do you
and
think that?
and because I needed to learn the lesson in how to deal with his situation because
Mm,
later in life it was going to come up in a relationship. And I
mm.
and so that was the lesson that I needed to learn. So I could learn how to handle myself in what learn that I did not prefer that in a relationship. Although I could handle it because I had dealt with my father, I prefer not to. And that was a lesson I had to learn.
Now, I was kind of joking about this yesterday, but it was sort of a quasi joke, quasi serious thing.
Yeah.
Why did you have to learn that? I mean, you may not know the answer to this, but
I
to
don't
me,
know.
that would be like really obvious. Like, no, thank you, I'm not going down that path. But apparently, that was not the case. And I was just wondering, do you have any idea why?
I feel like your soul sees the big picture and how your whole this time around is gonna go. So you say, okay, you're gonna hurt my feelings, you're gonna do this to me, you're gonna do this to me, and but it's all gonna make sense in the end. So that's how I feel like soul contracts are drafted.
Well, I'm glad it's going to make sense in the end because, quite honestly, most of the time I'm just confused whenever I talk about them. So this is a good thing to know.
It's like everything I go through that I don't prefer, I always ask myself, okay, what was the lesson here?
That is the key, knowing what you don't
Hmm.
prefer, learning what you don't prefer.
Yes.
Sometimes we have to do what Louise calls the two by four rule in order to understand what it is
Yeah.
that we don't prefer.
Yep.
We try to avoid the two by fours with spikes. Those are even more painful, but
Just a little. Just a little.
but it is amazing how often we will just keep doing the same things over and over and over again,
And expecting
putting
different
ourselves through this,
results,
expecting different results. Yeah,
which is
insane.
yeah,
The
exactly.
definition of
Yeah, the
insanity. It's
definition of
horrendous.
insanity. Yes.
At least according to the 12-step groups, and that's one point I totally agree with them on. That really is
Hmm.
insane. And we see it all the time. It's in all aspects of life. It's
Yeah.
amazing
Hmm.
when it pops up. So maybe that starts to be the explanation about, why these soul contracts are put together. Maybe not so much because of, well, I'm going to get hurt and I'm going to have this happen to me, I'm going to have that happen to me, but rather this is the kind of situation that can come up. That's the way I
Yeah.
look at it because
Hmm.
I don't really like the idea of, well, this is going to happen to me because that's a
Hmm.
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
suspect if there are soul contract negotiations that go on in the non-physical world, it's probably not, well, I'm going to get hurt on November 27th of 2084. No, it's like, no, that's not going to be. I think it's much more, well, okay, I'm going to go in this direction where I've got, these kinds of risks going on, and I could see potentially I could perhaps make this kind of mistake or that kind of mistake. So
Yeah.
I need people to help me, cover the route and figure out how to
Yes.
deal with it once I get there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, that would make more sense to me.
But
I could.
I also believe in good soul contracts because I believe you're like, all right, you know what, this time around you're gonna be my soulmate, but not the only one. If that's
Hence
what
the
you
bit,
choose.
hence
Hence
the
the
bit about
divorce
the
rate.
85-year-old sexual deviant that the Bill was
Yeah.
talking about yesterday.
Hence the rate
Oh,
in STDs in nursing homes.
when you guys said that, I said, "Whoa, wait a minute.
It's
Am I
so
living like a
true.
sheltered life or what?" I mean, I had no clue of anything like that.
When you get to the home, you'll find out.
Well, I don't intend to live in a home like that, to be perfectly honest.
Well, we never intend to, but some of us make it there.
But I'm a deliberate creator. Right? So
Touche.
my
Touche.
intention is to live. You know what the ideal life is?
Mm.
The ideal life is where you live abundantly, right to the
Hmm.
hilt, until you finally decide that you're done, and then you fall over dead. And it's very simple. Just
That
real
sounds like a
clean,
plan.
but there's no, there's no pain, there's no stress. It's just no muss, no fuss. We're
Yeah,
just gonna have a great time. We're gonna love life. Everything's gonna be wonderful, and then we're done.
yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that to me is the ideal. So, yeah. So if any of our listeners are walking along about, 50, 60, 70 years from now and you see me lying by the side of the road, you'll know what happened.
It's like he lived a full life.
He was done. Yep. I'll carry a little business card in my pocket that says, I'm done.
I'm done. Walking around with pocket DNRs. Okay, that's what we're
That's
doing.
right, yes. Oh, good grief, that's funny. But seriously, let's get back to what the real issue is. 'Cause the real issue is a serious issue, and it's an issue
Yes.
that a lot of people deal with. There are probably too, and you may know this better than I do. There are
Hmm.
probably a lot of people who deal with undiagnosed situations,
Oh yes, yes,
and that
definitely.
probably causes even more stressful situations because now there's no help, at least until
Hmm.
somebody figures out what's going on.
Yeah, something has to go horribly wrong for someone to get noticed because people go under the radar so often.
Which will eventually happen. I mean, that's one of the beauties of the law of attraction. The
Mm,
negative spirals out of control and then comes to a crash, and like, oh, geez, there was something negative going on there.
mm-hmm.
That's how we notice these things. But if you're in the middle of something, you're living with X, whatever X is, some person in your life, and we see posts about this on Facebook, a variety
Hmm.
of different of somebody who gives you a hard time. I saw one young woman who had posted about how there was this person from early in her life who had abused her and had treated her badly, and now he had physically attacked her, and the police didn't believe her, and all this other stuff.
Mm.
And I mean, aside from the fact that the guy behaved like a criminal, which is certainly an important thing,
Yeah.
it sounds like there was something like this going on in the background. I mean,
Hmm.
most people, I'm not saying there are no people who decide on becoming the Marquis de Sade, but most people don't make that their first choice. So,
Right. And I
you
don't think
know,
it's like a regular decision that you just
right.
make while you're walking down the street.
I'm
You
going to
know?
grow up to be an abuser. Hey. No,
Yeah,
that's not the way it goes.
yeah, there's clearly something off
Yeah.
and undiscovered and even worse, when it is discovered, there are people who choose not to stay on their medication.
Mm,
Or the idea is they take their medication and they feel better so they don't feel like they need it anymore because they
hmm.
feel like they're fixed. And it's
Yeah.
like that's not the case. You feel better because you're on your medication, but they don't see it
Hmm.
that way. So they stop
Hmm.
taking their medication and then they start going acting the way they were before, and it becomes a, another problem in the family.
Hmm. So both of those are bad situations. But let's go back to the
Mhm.
first one because
Mhm.
I can imagine there are probably listeners, people tuning in,
Yeah.
people who are listening to the podcast recording who are saying, there are certain people I can think of in my life, or a certain person in my life who I've often wondered about them,
Mhm.
but I don't feel like I'm in a position where I can do anything about it. I
Mhm.
don't feel like it's my place to take them to the hospital or get them treatment or something like that. And yet they're impacting my life.
Mhm.
What do I do? What do you say to somebody like that? What do you do when you're in the you feel powerless? You feel like it's outside of your control, but you also know it's affecting you. And I think it's probably what happens in the vast majority of cases where people are posting about stuff like that on Facebook. Somebody who's treating them badly or whatever.
Well, I feel like in that case, that's up, how you deal with it is up to you. So if you're not close enough to the situation where you feel like you should get the person help, then maybe you're in the type of situation where you need to separate yourself from that person
Hmm. Yeah,
because they're not conducive to your mental health.
that's true. And quite often to your physical health.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah,
For you to survive, you might just have to let this person go.
that can be hard.
Yeah, it can be hard. Yeah. Probably one of the most difficult situations you'll ever have to deal with. But
Hmm.
if it needs to be done, it needs to be done. If there's
Did you
nothing else you can do, then that's what you got to do.
did you have to do that with your father?
Definitely. Yep.
What was that like? Talk about that.
Uh, it was easy for me. because we had fallen out before
Ah,
and not spoken for like 2 years at a time, and this happened twice. But this final time, I was going through my mental breakdown, and I
mm,
called him and I let him know, and I said, listen, I'm having suicidal thoughts. I'm going into the hospital. I don't feel like myself. And I'm crying on the phone. And I'm like, trying to talk to my dad. Like, you're my dad. Like, come on. And he's like,
yeah.
well, what am I supposed to do while you're gone? And I was like, I had to stop for a second and be like, dude, this is not about you right now. Like,
Yeah, right. No kidding.
so I was like, all right, that's it. I'm done. And then while I was in the hospital getting help and stuff like that, talking to therapists, I realized I was like, you know what? He's not. He wasn't meant to be a father. He's not able to care for anyone but himself, and that unfortunately can be a characteristic of bipolar. So he can't handle more than himself. So I
And it
can't
sounds
do
like
it.
he even has trouble handling himself,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
right?
Definitely.
I mean, that's a full-time job and he's not getting it done.
Yeah, it is. It's like
Yeah.
two jobs because you have two personalities fighting for each other. It's
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
so
Yeah, it's almost schizophrenic at that point. Not quite, but almost.
I do have another family member going through schizophrenia, and that
Oh,
side of the family is it's rough. Like, it's trying to get him to take his medications, but he's of age, so he can refuse the medication.
refused. Yeah.
And his family's like, well, what can we do? And he's like, well, I don't have to live here. So now he's running around homeless, and no one can do anything about it because he's over 21. So what can you do? So that's
Yeah.
hard to go through by itself.
Yeah.
Schizophrenia is a whole nother ball of wax.
It really is. I mean,
Mhm.
there are advantages to being married to a psychotherapist, which I am.
Mhm. Mhm.
There are also there's the plus side and there's the minus side. And the minus side is learning from her what it is like. I mean, she did not actively treat schizophrenics, but she
Mhm.
knew other clinicians who did, and
Mhm.
she heard the stories and so forth. And oh my
Yeah.
God, the things that people go through who are suffering
Mhm.
from that situation. Oh, and it's both the people who have the schizophrenia and the people around them. It's rough
Yeah.
on everybody
Mhm.
involved. It's
Yes.
yeah. It's one of those times where I think about what we learn as deliberate creators and as aspiring deliberate creators.
Mhm.
We get teachers like Abraham telling us that our thoughts create our health and our illness.
Mhm.
And I believe it's true.
Mhm.
And they give us tools and practices to use to shift our thoughts around, pivot from the bad feeling to the good feeling, all that kind of stuff. And it's all very good. And yet, even they acknowledge there are times where the gap between the negative place you might be in and the positive place you want to get to are so far apart that
Mhm.
you can't get there in one leap. You have to kind of take it one rung of the ladder at a time.
Baby
And
steps. Yeah.
those little baby steps, yeah, and which I think is the right thing to do and to say to advocate that. But when I look at it practically, from the
Mhm.
point of view of being either somebody who has a severe mental illness like that or someone who's dealing with it, God, that must seem overwhelming. Like I'll never get there. How
Yeah.
could I
It
possibly get there?
it gives you a feeling of hopelessness.
And that's probably the number one thing that really needs to be overcome is that feeling of
Mhm.
hopelessness.
Yes. Because once you don't feel like you're hopeless or like you're a burden,
Hmm.
then you start to build on that, and you start to feel like, okay, I can take this one day at a time, and I can get better, and I can accomplish goals, and as little as they are or as big as they are, I can do things. But you got to get past those two major hurdles, the hopelessness and feeling like you're a burden on your family or friends or loved ones.
Which means to me that the people who are dealing with the most difficult stuff, the
Mhm.
schizophrenia, the bipolar, the severe mental illnesses and so forth,
Mhm.
have a lot to teach to the rest of us.
Yes.
Because we all have situations where we feel hopeless, but they feel extremely hopeless. So
Mhm.
anything that someone who's going through that can tell the rest of us, about,
Mhm.
well, here are some ideas about how to get hope back. That's
Yeah.
pretty big time advice right there.
Mhm. I
Now
totally
you've been
agree.
been dealing with your own stuff. I mean, you've itemized the list before, and I think it's like anxiety and agoraphobia, and you were diagnosed bipolar, but now you're pointing out to me before the show that, well, that was because your dad was bipolar, and so now you're
Yep.
saying to the psychiatrist, wait a minute, hold on. Now, don't give me diseases I don't need.
Right. Let's not add to the list.
Yeah,
No, it
exactly.
was I was diagnosed with bipolar at the first time I got diagnosed with anything. They were like, "Oh, your dad's bipolar? Okay, so it must be bipolar. Throw these meds at her, she'll be fine."
Yeah.
And after a couple of years and getting tested and all this stuff, that's when they realized it's not bipolar. She has Asperger's. And how those two intertwine, I don't know, but that's what happened. And I mean, I have Asperger's on top of like four or five other different mental illnesses. So it's a fun bag.
It's like Sean Inker says, he meant this in a humorous way, and it is humorous when you look at it from the abstract
Mhm.
point of view. He says if you go into a therapist, we don't want you to come out with one mental illness. We want you to have 10, so you keep coming back over and over again. So pay for the house in Bermuda,
Yeah, got to keep the business going.
which is a sad truth. That is what happens very often
Yeah.
in the mental health field.
Mhm.
It's one of those fields. There are a lot of fields where ethics play an important role. To me, that's one of the biggest ones
Mhm.
because it's so easy to cross that line if you're a provider.
Yeah, it is.
It's so easy.
Mhm.
I may take, and the truly, interestingly enough, though, this is something I picked up talking to Joel Elston, who's
Mhm.
told a lot of stories on the show about, psychiatrists that he's met and people who are in
Mhm.
the field who are regularly working with people who have severe situations. And I remember one time he was telling me a tale of two psychiatrists. One
Ah.
psychiatrist One psychiatrist was one who made it his mission in life to see as many patients as possible in a day.
Mm.
And he wasn't spending time with any of them. He was a pill dispenser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And in his private conversations away from his practice, he would brag about how much money he was making and how
Mm-mm.
successful his practice was because he was just dishing meds, dishing meds, dishing meds. On the other hand, the other psychiatrist Joel was talking about was a good friend of his who wouldn't do that on his worst day,
Right.
and more importantly, is dedicated to getting people out of their mental difficulties as fast as possible.
Yes.
What's sometimes called the grow or go syndrome,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And boy, oh boy, they're almost diametrically opposite.
They are. Yeah. Yeah.
So now I got to ask you. Now you only have the limited experience of the various caregivers and therapists and psychiatrists that you've dealt with, but what's
Yeah.
your sense? Are there more of type A or of type B?
Let me tell you, on the Cape, it is not limited because they come and go
Not
so
limited.
fast. They come
Oh,
and go so fast. I have had in the last 11 years of dealing with these issues, I have had over 10 clinicians, maybe more.
wow,
Yeah.
wow.
So that's at least one clinician a year. Yeah.
That's serious turnover right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's counting you have to have a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner and a therapist.
Right.
With the insurance I have, you cannot get medication without seeing someone to make sure that you're taking it and um taking it properly and getting talk therapy and help along with it.
Which means that you're basically averaging out, and this is like a broad mathematical application. You're averaging out about one psychiatrist every 2 years and one therapist every 2 years.
Yep. Yep.
Well, that's not very good continuity.
It's not, but it takes. I've gone from the psychiatrist I have now is amazing. Like he knows I'm in between therapists, so he's like, you can call me any time of day. We can talk about whatever, anything you need. And
Uh,
that's not his job. It's not his job to talk to me.
yeah,
It's his job to give me my medication. But he
yeah.
takes the time out to make sure I'm okay. Whereas I had another one who literally, and this pissed me off in the worst way. I can laugh about it now, but it melted my butter so bad.
Hmm.
Um, they told me, I told them, I was like, I'm really struggling with my insomnia. I need something to help me sleep. They were like, well, have you tried warm milk? I was like, she can't be serious right now. Then she said, well, what about Benadryl? I said, it doesn't work.
Benadryl?
Benadryl. I was like, it
Wait a
doesn't
minute.
work.
Benadryl? Benadryl's an antihistamine.
Yes, but
What does that have to do with sleep?
because a lot of psychiatrists like to take the side effects of medication and use them to help with your symptoms. So being Benadryl having that drowsy side effect, they will prescribe it as a sleep aid.
You've got to be kidding.
I swear.
I mean, it's not even a good sedative. It really isn't. It
No,
does have
it
a
isn't.
slight side effect, but it's not. Oh, gee.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. I've been on both sides. I know what Joel's talking about. I've seen it both ways. But yeah, no, I literally was like, I need to get this lady fired because at this point, I'm a better therapist than, I mean, I'm a better
Hmm.
clinician than she is
Yeah.
because and I'm on the phone with everyone I know, and I was like, she told me to drink warm milk, and but she was like dead serious. Oh, and then the third thing was she
Well, I mean,
told,
there's nothing wrong with drinking warm milk. I mean, that's fine, but you can't
well,
use that as the definitive cure, especially if it's not working.
that's what I'm saying. But the third thing that she told me to do was she said, "Well, have you tried praying about it?"
Okay.
And
Well, that's okay. Yeah. Well, that's kind of along the lines, sort of being a deliberate creator. So I can kind
yeah,
of
but
appreciate
in
that.
in her position, it's church and state. You're not supposed to be preaching
You got to
religion.
separate them. Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're not supposed to be preaching religion while I'm asking you for help for sleep. Like,
Hmm.
really? I was like, all right, I'm gonna go home and pray about my warm milk. I gotta go, and I walked out.
I'm gonna pray about my warm milk. I love that.
Uh,
That is an interesting point, though,
mhm,
the separation that you talk about there.
yeah, mhm,
Because we do have that expectation societally. We have that kind of expectation.
yeah, mhm,
And there are many of us, myself included, who think that we rely too heavily on medication.
mhm,
And so
mhm.
we kind of want our doctors to start opening up to other possibilities. But you just described how that can actually go further than what you really want as the client. And
Yeah.
that's an interesting balance right there. That's a
Well,
tough balance.
that depends on who you're going to. If you're into like, I'm not gonna say woo woo because that's not how I feel about it, but like if you're into crystals, if you're into what what's it starts with a W.
Oh, something with a W? Um,
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm drawing a blank.
me too. Okay. Well, if you're into crystals, if you're into that type of stuff, then you go to a place that specializes in that, and that's the type of therapist you see. And that because that's what you're asking for. You don't start pushing your agenda on me. That's where I draw the line, and that's where I have the problem. So she didn't even ask me if I was religious. She just said, "Did you pray about it?"
So a more appropriate question from your perspective would have been, do you pursue any alternatives?
Yes, that would have been a way more appropriate question.
Okay. And I can understand why a clinician might get tripped up on that because clinicians are taught the scientific method, which is
Mhm.
you get very specific. You specifically for this, specifically for that. You don't go
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
Going
Mhm.
general is generally considered taboo. Although
Mhm.
fortunately, not all physicians adopt that viewpoint, and they end up getting the
Mhm.
information quicker as a result. But they're trained to look at very micro level detail. So I can see
Wellness. That
why
was
they
the
would.
W word.
Oh, a wellness person. Yes, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. You brought it up, so I'm going to bring it up too because this is my stuff. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I am convinced that we as a society are far too focused on sickness,
Okay.
and we need to focus far more on health.
Mhm.
I mean, you talked about mental health. I take it more broadly. I think it's all health is mental health. I
Mhm.
think that
Mhm.
that the topic of being healthy is about having the mental framework so that
Yeah.
you're healthy at all times. Because
Mhm.
I buy into the idea that we make ourselves sick with our thoughts. I really think that's true,
Mhm.
and I think it's true 100% of the time. So starting with from that perspective, first of all, do you think that there is truth to that? Do you think it's accurate that our thoughts
Yes.
create our existence? Okay.
Mhm.
So how do we get from A to B? Right now, we are in a society that is heavily dependent on sickness care.
Mhm.
They call it health care, but it's always about sickness.
Healthcare.
Yeah, you don't go into a hospital in order to get a health exam. You
Right.
go into a hospital because you're sick.
Right. Well, no,
You
you
know,
get your physical every year to make sure that you're healthy.
even there, they're looking for sickness though. They don't test. There are no tests for
Well,
health.
it's all in how you think about it. Because I think about it as, what am I maintaining my healthiness?
Okay, well that's good. That's definitely a healthy frame of mind. Um, I still see it as what are the practitioners focusing on?
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who are spending the large chunks of time every day on it. So they're the ones generating the biggest vibration from an
Yeah.
LOA perspective. Um,
I mean, it
Not that
depends
clients
on.
don't.
It
Patients do
depends.
too. Don't get me wrong, but it's
Yeah.
both. It's a combination.
Yeah.
So
I
I'm going
think
to
it
ask you,
depends on the
how do you get
doctor.
there? How do you make the shift though? How does society shift?
I think it's all in how we think of things, and that and how we word things. I learned from, um, and this is another reason why I love the show so much. One of the actors from Supernatural had depression for a really long time and had suicidal ideations, and he talks about it openly, and he started a charity called, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget. It's not I am enough. That's his saying. That's the slogan. The slogan is I am enough, and the charity is, I forget. But anyway, so um, I donate to that charity because I feel that on a certain level. Like, I totally agree with it. And I was watching a Comic-Con one day, and they were doing a panel, and a lot of people that go there also deal with mental health, and he is like, so they're like, hi, I have really bad anxiety, but I wanted to say hi to you, and da 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 da. And one person got up and said, um, she worded it in a very negative way. I don't remember how she said it, but she said she suffers from depression and anxiety. And he corrected her, and he said, no, you deal with mental health. That's that's how you have to. And he's like, I want you to say it after me. And when from that point on, I was like, oh my god, that's like a totally different way to think about it. And
Mm,
it is better, and it does make you feel better. It's like, I don't suffer from these things. I deal with mental health issues. And so, like I said, I think it's all in how you word things, because you speak things into existence. And it's also in how you think about it yourself.
mm,
So how you make yourself feel.
hmm I'm going to go negative for just a moment. I'm
Oh,
going to go
okay.
I'm going to go over to the side of the doubters who
Mhm.
doubt this whole LOA thing, the woo-woo stuff that we talk about all the time. They're saying, "Well, Alex, you still have all these phobias. It's not really helping you.
It's
You haven't cured yourself of all this by focusing on positive. It doesn't do you any good." What do you say?
Mhm. I say it takes baby steps, and Rome wasn't built in a day.
So have you made progress?
I've made a lot of progress. I was In the beginning, I was at the point where I had built myself a fort in my room and wouldn't come out of it.
You
Now I
built
can
a fort?
built a fort.
What'd you build it out of? I'm
20
curious.
blankets and chairs.
Blankets and chairs. Okay, so
Yeah.
nobody could get in without tripping
No
over
one
a
could
chair
get
or
in, and nope, there was no. I had built a fort, and I would not come out of it, and no one could get me out of it. I came out of it to pee and eat, and that was it. And now I'm at the point where I have my service dog, so I will go out from time to time, and I went to my brother from another mother. I went to his wedding last year. So I've come a long way.
hmm Okay. That I think is key right there
Yeah. Mhm.
for anybody who's dealing with, whether they know that they're dealing with a diagnosed situation or not,
Mhm.
is knowing that when you take the baby steps, you actually do get better.
Mhm. Yep.
That's
Because you
big.
got you got to build upon each step.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's also a little bit of a, I guess I call it a lesson that's in there, which is improvement is health.
Mhm.
Health is not a final destination. It's not like
Mm.
unhealthy, 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 healthy. It's healthier, 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 healthy.
I like it.
Because otherwise, I mean, you can get defeated really easily. That's what we were talking about earlier.
Oh,
About who's
yeah.
in that really depths of depression. They can't see any hope of getting there. Even the idea
No.
of baby steps seems overwhelming. It's like, because
Yes.
yeah, I could take baby steps all I want to. I'm not going to crawl out of this. This is like far more than baby steps can handle. That's the feeling.
That's the feeling. That is the feeling. But I will say, from where I was in the beginning and to where I am now, I no longer deal with depression.
Which is great.
Yes.
Were you diagnosed with depression, or was just something you experienced?
No, I was diagnosed. Everything I say, I'm diagnosed with. I don't assume I have anything.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you were actually diagnosed with depression, and you actually beat depression.
Yeah.
You beat it with a stick. No, you didn't do that. I know. But you overcame it. Good.
I
So
overcame it. Yes.
so now, if we wanted to turn that into the positive phrase, what did you replace depression with? What became the new state of mind?
Hmm. I remember again, Jared Padalecki said that there's only two ways to deal with it. You either deal with it or you die. So basically, he was saying you either deal with what you have or you kill yourself. So those are your two options. Once you decide you don't want to do one, you're going to do the other. So I decided I didn't want to kill myself. And from that, I built upon that and decided I'm going to deal with it.
So I think we can honestly say then that you left depression in favor of life.
Yes.
That's really the positive phrasing right there. You
Hmm.
chose life.
Yeah, I chose life.
Okay. That's good. Hooray.
Yeah, thank
I'm glad of that.
you.
We wouldn't be doing a show if you hadn't chosen life. That's really good.
That's true. That's true.
What other are there others that you have overcome and moved away from the diagnosis, and the diagnosis no longer applies?
Mm, nope, everything else still applies.
Everything still applies. Okay. So there's a lot more progress to be made, but
A lot more.
you've
Hmm.
proven that progress can be made.
Yes.
You've experienced it.
Hmm.
What does that experience do for you?
Um, I know I'm supposed to feel proud, but I
It's
feel
not
like that's
supposed to.
just
It's what you feel. You feel what you feel. It doesn't. It's not
well,
up to somebody else.
well, that's what the therapists are telling me. They're like, "Aren't you proud that you did this? And aren't you proud that you did that?" And I'm like, "No, I just feel like it just needed to be done, so I did it." Like that's, I don't know.
See,
It's,
I mean, I'm
it's
not going
just
to put a
life.
word on you,
Yeah.
but I am going to put a word on you because
Okay.
I want to go in a different direction. If I was going to say that you had to pick a word, I wouldn't have said proud. I would have said
Hmm.
relieved.
Okay, I can take relief.
Because relief actually is what you were looking for. You wanted relief from that depression,
Yeah,
and you got it.
definitely. Hmm.
Hooray! You got the relief.
Oh, so
Now,
true.
I can't honestly say that was original. That I get that from Abraham. That's the Abraham
Yeah.
viewpoint.
Hmm.
Whenever we're trying to move away from something we don't like, what we want is relief from that thing. We want to feel relieved of the burden of whatever that thing is that we
Yes.
definitely do not prefer, and we're 100% certain we do not prefer it.
Hmm.
We want the relief. We want to
Yes.
feel better. That's really what it's all about, I think, is finding that relief,
Hmm.
and you found it. So that's
Yes.
really good. Which means you can find relief on the other stuff too.
Yep. It's just a
That's
matter of time.
that's the takeaway.
Yep.
I think it's, okay, I did it with air. Well, I can do it elsewhere too.
Hmm.
Steve Rawls tuned in listening to us. He says, celebrate the shit out of it. That's my big one.
Hi, Steve.
Can always count on Steve to just ruin the rating of the show just by bringing in the swear words. I love it. Oh, that's great. I can always count on Steve to give me a laugh. That's one of the things I love.
Good old
So,
Steve.
okay. Oh, he's fabulous. So, okay. So we've been talking about the topic that you brought up. Have we talked about the areas that you wanted to talk about, or is there anything that we've overlooked at this point? Because I want to make
Um,
sure we're really covering the topic the way you thought about it.
I'm really sitting here trying to remember the name of Jared's charity. Oh my God. I need to Google it, but my phone is in use right now.
Yes, this is true.
Oh my God,
Well,
I can't believe it slips my mind because I like live for it. Like, wow, I'm terrible. I'm a terrible fan.
no, no, no. You're a good fan. Got to turn that around. Got to pivot to it. So, all right, give me his name. I'll look it up for you, because I can look it up on a computer here.
I don't know if you can spell it. It's Jared Padalecki.
I don't have to spell it accurately. That's one of the nice
Google
things
will
about
spell
Google.
it.
Google will spell it, and it's his
Yep.
charity. Let's see what he's got. The Jared Foundation.
Nope, not that one.
Let's see. I definitely gave a name that confused Google. Let's put in a couple more letters. Maybe it'll understand it better. Padalecki, charity, supernatural. Always keep fighting campaign.
Yes, the always keep fighting. AKF, always keep fighting.
There it is.
Oh my God, that would have bothered me all day. It's one of those things that would have like interrupted my nap and I wouldn't have been able to sleep.
Well, that's really critical because sleep is one of your issues. So we got to make sure
Yeah,
that we take
exactly.
those sleep
I don't I
inducers out
don't
of the
like
way.
having anything hanging over my head before I go to sleep because that
Hmm.
it lingers.
Yeah, that's important. So, since that's the last thing that was left to talk about, where this topic's concerned, from your perspective anyway, tell us more about his charity. Tell us what you love about it. Tell us what's so cool.
Well, it started off as him talking about his mental awareness and what he was going through, and how even though you would think he would be the happiest person on the earth because he makes so much money shooting this show and doing a show that he loves so much with
Hmm.
a great crew and close family and stuff like that. And he met his wife on the show and they have great kids. He still suffers from depression. So that was his thing, is like, it doesn't matter where you are in life or who you are, you can still deal with different mental issues. So that was the beginning of it, and then it made Supernatural like this. Supernatural went into mental awareness like overload. So now it has like 4 or 5 different different charities that they do. So they do
Oh, wow.
like fun runs. They're doing the Boston Marathon in honor of their charity, and um, they also started and I wanted to be a part of this, but I couldn't afford to do it. This suicide hotline for Supernatural fans, and you can volunteer to do it for a year, but you have to be trained in how to help someone with who's contemplating suicide. Obviously, you can't just jump on the phone and go, yeah, but Supernatural's on, so everything's fine. So,
That's probably not your best approach. No.
especially now with the show being canceled, I'm sure the phone lines are going crazy. But so they started this suicide hotline, but the thing is you have to pay $250 to be trained in first aid and all that stuff, and
Right.
unfortunately I can't afford that, but I still wanted to give back in some way, so I do buy the t-shirts, the Always Keep Fighting t-shirts. I have like 5 of those, and yeah, so that's another reason that that I love the show, is the characters and what they stand for and everything else.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate. This is the last question probably for the show, but I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute. Always
Uh-huh.
keep fighting. Fighting suggests to me resisting. So what do you think about that? The name of his campaign is Always Keep Fighting, and it makes me think, well, then it's going to be an ongoing fight.
Well, it's always keep fighting for life.
Well, fighting is fighting, though. I'm playing devil's advocate here, but
Yeah, you
fighting.
are. It's just when you decide to choose life as opposed to going out suicide wise, just always keep fighting.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I like the idea of choosing life. I think that's the good one. So
Yeah.
if we're my charity, I'd call it Always Choose Life.
I think there's one already out there called that, and that's probably why they didn't do that.
Well, that could be. Yeah, that's
Because
true.
that just sounds like the obvious choice.
Isn't that interesting though? The obvious choice is the one we usually do skip.
But then it's like always keep fighting. Like it encompasses every type of mental illness. It's not just suicide by itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like maybe that's why he chose it.
It could be. I just have this feeling that
Or
there's so
maybe
many
it's
things we fight.
something.
We fight cancer, we fight mental illness, we fight all these different diseases, and I keep asking myself, is that perpetuating the disease? Because we're fighting.
Nah, I don't think so.
You don't think so? All right, I'll
Nah.
believe it. Because we're out of time anyway. So. And I got to get the announcements in.
Yep.
Because the announcements are always important. That's where we say, if you're not yet a subscriber, please become a subscriber to the show. And it's really easy to do. You just go to the homepage of our website, loatoday.net, and right at the top of the page, you'll see this great big icon that's labeled for your particular kind of device. You click it, it walks you through, and bang, just like that, you are a subscriber. And then, of course, after you've been listening to the episodes and you're liking what you're hearing, share it. Share it on social media. Let people know so that other people can get their daily dose of happy. And I know I asked you yesterday, Alyx, but you never know. Things might have changed in 12 hours. So is there anything coming up on spoiler alert that people might want to know about?
No, nothing new. Nothing has happened in the last 24 hours. So.
Supernatural
Nope.
hasn't been, they haven't decided that they're going to add an extra season or something like that. So we haven't had that.
You know what? A lot of people are signing petitions and trying to get it back, but it's like the actors have been doing this for 15 years. Let them have their break.
Yeah, it's a long, long time.
Let them be with their families. And I've just come to the conclusion. I was like, I guess they can be with their families and watch their kids grow up. Whatever.
It's probably also, I know this is true for most series that go on for a long, long time. After a while, you start feeling like you're scraping the bottom of the barrel trying to find ideas to keep the series going.
That's another thing that they said, yeah, that they're
Yeah.
running low on ideas. And I'm like, but how
Yeah.
could you? You can go so many ways. It's supernatural. There's no end.
Plus,
guess
also, sometimes you just need to move on. I mean, maybe they're done. Maybe they themselves have gotten all they needed to get out of
Yeah.
being the supernatural people. They needed to go do something else. That's
Yeah.
part of life.
Mm-hmm.
So. Anyway, I don't know if any of that really helps the Supernatural fans, but I thought I'd mention it anyway.
Every
So
little
thank
bit
you.
helps at this point.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing up the topic. That was a good one because we really haven't looked very much in the past at how it affects other people in the lives of people who are dealing with mental illness. So yeah, good one. Thank you for bringing that up.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
that. Yep. Thank you to our live stream listeners. Thank you to the podcast listeners as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.